many of you just enjoy the Christmas time? You know, we oftentimes, you know, we think about the Thanksgiving meals and being together with family. And then we also see, you know, just this past, I think it was Thursday night downtown, they had the lighting ceremony downtown, and all the kids were out there singing and performing. And we get caught up in all the Christmas activities, whether it be the Christmas parade and going around neighborhoods and looking at lights. But oftentimes we forget what the season is really all about. You know, and that God so loved the world that he sent his only son, Jesus Christ. And so that's actually what this season is all about. And it's it's one of the greatest stories, the greatest story ever told in the Bible. And you know what? I believe that story should also be a part of our story. Because Jesus came, he didn't come as a king, because just this past week, my son, who's 8 years old, Eli, he said, "Hey, Dad, I got a question for you." I said, "Okay." He said, "Where did God come from?" Well, first he asked that to my wife, Barbie, and she said, "That's a dad question." I'm like, "Really? You're not going to answer that?" She said, "Nope." And I looked at him, and I said, "Well," I said, "Eli," I said, "God's always been." He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "You know, in the Bible it said God created the heavens and the earth." I said, "That was like the first verse of the Bible." He said, "Yeah." I said, "But God created it." I said, "He was already here." He said, "Well, how old is he?" Now, come on. I said, "He's just old. He's always been." And I said, "Jesus is the same way. He's always been." I said, "So there's no age on God." And what that really, it made me think about, how great is our God? To think that he was never created. He has always been. And that he wanted to be in relationship so bad and wanted to be worshiped, and he wanted that relationship and community with you, that he said, "You know what? I've got an idea. I'm going to create these little human things. And you know what? I'm going to be in relationship and in community with them." And so, you know, it is my hope today that you realize that this story, the greatest story that has ever been told, is part of my story, part of your story, because that's what I'm going to do today. Today, I'm actually going to be finishing up this little mini series, if that's what you want to call it. But today, in the title of my message is "Turning Your Mess into a Message." You know, last week we had turning your mess into a masterpiece, showing what God can do for you. And it doesn't matter what you've been through and what you've done, that God can take whatever mess that you've made of life, no matter what mistakes that you've done, that God can take that mess and make a masterpiece out of it. But we're going to take that a step further today, to where I'm going to give you some keys on how to take that mess and to make it a message, and giving you the opportunity to speak life into other people, just like Jesus spoke life into you. So let's put on our thinking caps for a little bit. How many of you ever, when you were growing up in church, ever went to Sunday school? Okay, and you had the God hour of 9:45, correct? You had Sunday school started at 9:45 and church started at 11. So you had that Sunday school time to where you learned all of these great Bible stories. Okay, so when I say David, you think what? Okay, you think Goliath. That's correct. And Abraham and Sarah, okay? What were they facing? What was their story? Anybody remember? They were childless. God promised them a child. And Abraham actually made a child with Sarah's servant. But then guess what? God kept his word. Even though Abraham and Sarah got impatient and wanted their timing instead of God's timing, God's promise still came true. Okay? Joseph and the coat of many colors. You remember that story? Okay? and that how he was rejected by his family and he was sold into slavery. Moses in the Red Sea. When I say Daniel in the Bible, what do you think of? Daniel in the lion's den. See, I've got some Sunday school scholars in here. That is just awesome, okay? Here's a tough one. What about Jonah? Jonah and what? The whale. That's exactly right. And Joshua, he did what? Fought the battle of what? I'm done. There's nothing. I'm good. Okay? So, you know what? In every one of these stories, they are known for what? They had a mess. They had a mess that they had to overcome. Some of them was a mess that they caused, Abraham and Sarah. Okay, but you know what? God was still faithful. But then also some of it was just because of a mess that was made and they stepped up to the plate. But how did they overcome this mess? They applied their faith. So that's what we're going to be talking a lot about today is our faith. Every great hero of faith is not known for their effortless, carefree life. So every one of those that was mentioned in Scripture, they gave an effort. They had great faith. Okay? What about Moses? Think about that. Think about that. How he overcame such great obstacles, because guess what? He led millions and millions, and guess what? He had a speech impediment. God was still able to use him. But these people are known for trusting God in the midst of their circumstances. They had faith. So today's title, like I said, is turning my mess into my message. And notice I did say messes. I didn't just say one mess. Because can I tell you something? When you're doing something good and something big for God, Satan's going to take notice. And so he's going to do whatever he can to cause you to slip up, to throw that roadblock into that bump in the road for you to stumble on. He's going to try to trip you up. So there is going to be messes, not just a mess. But you know what? No matter how many messes that you have going on, even at the same time, God can still take that mess, make it a masterpiece, and then turn it into a message. So when we're facing one of life's messes, we should remember, I've got 7 points today. I'm not just a 3-point preacher. I got 7. And I was telling somebody, I said, last week I had about 23 to 25 slides. This week I've got about 43 slides. So I got till 2, right? Okay, maybe not. I got I don't know. No, we're going to go through this. I'm going to be very conscious of your time, and we're going to go through this. But I know that God has something planned for this service. And so I want to give God plenty of time at the end to do what he wants to do. So let's take a look at the definition of obstacle. If you'll go there, the Oxford English Dictionary defines obstacle as a thing that blocks one way or prevents or hinders progress. And didn't we just talk about or sing about a song about walls? That those walls will fall? Okay? And didn't Pastor Jason speak a message a couple of weeks ago that talked about our rocks or our boulders? Is that an obstacle? That is definitely an obstacle that we have to face at times. So now we've defined obstacle. Now let's define opportunity. It is a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. So too many people want to be in the Biblical Heroes Hall of Fame, but they don't want to have faith. They want to do it their way and say, you know what, God, I know you're good and everything, and I know you're all powerful, but I got this. They don't want to have that faith, but yet they still want the recognition to be in the biblical hero. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, when David went out in the battlefield to face Goliath, who was a champion, a 9-foot tall, ginormous guy. He went out with a slingshot and 5 stones. You can't tell me that didn't take faith. And I was just thinking about, as I was studying for this, and I'm just reading over that story, I saw that where the king offered David his armor. And I'm thinking, it reminds me of one of my kids that say, "Daddy, can I wear one of your shirts?" Okay. And they come out and it's hanging to the floor saying, "How's this?" Yeah, you still got a little growing to do. But I'm seeing that David did the same thing. He tried to put on that armor, and he took a couple of steps, and he says, "This isn't going to work." So he took what he had, which was a sling and 5 stones, and he went out and slayed a giant. And then in Exodus chapter 14, when Moses had the Red Sea in front of him and the Pharaoh's army behind him, do you think that it took a little bit of faith to take that staff and stretch it over that water and the waters part? Think about that. He was between a rock and a hard place, but God shines his brightest in the realm of the impossible. He shines his brightest in the realm of impossible. So number 2, God will turn your pain into another person's gain. I know you've heard no pain, no gain. Well, you know what? When it comes to biblical principles, it's upside down. Okay? So God will turn your pain into another person's gain. God wants to use us in the areas of our greatest pain. It's much harder for me to walk with someone through an addiction to drugs and to alcohol. Because you know what? I've never walked in those shoes. Now, I can come up beside someone that is struggling with those battles, and I can love them and love them like Christ loves you. I can do that, and I can pray for you, and I can be there at any time. But I don't know what that pain is on a road to recovery. But you know what? I have experienced pain. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, to tell you a little bit about my pain that I've experienced in life. Okay, in 2008, I lost my grandmother. You're like, okay, Daniel, that's a loved one. That's your grandmother. You've known her for just a few years. Okay, that was tough for me. You know why? Because on the day that we buried my grandmother is also when I had a stillborn baby boy. That's pain. So I know that pain. So if there's people who are struggling of losing a child, guess what? I can stand with you because I have felt that pain. I can come along with you because I felt that pain. And you know what? Later that year, I also experienced divorce. In 2008, lost my grandmother, lost a child, and then my marriage was dissolved. So you know what? That's my story. That's part of my pain, to where I can walk with you through that pain, okay? Even though I may have made mistakes, may have made mistakes to cause that marriage to possibly go south, guess what? It doesn't matter, because God can take that, and God can use that pain to become that message that can work through and work for someone else. So talking about pain, even during that time, and you guys, I'm being very vulnerable up here. Because during that time, I was raised in a preacher's house. And I knew how the church, the religious people, looked at people who have gone through a divorce. And when it came to, are you going to walk beside them? No, I'm going to trip them and watch them fall. I've seen it, guys. I've experienced it. I've lived it. And at my lowest time of my life, I also contemplating and said to myself, this world would be better off without me. That's pain. But you know what? I serve a God of restoration. I serve a God that can take this mess that I've made. He could make it a masterpiece. And that gives me an opportunity to make it my message when it comes to helping other people out, because I've had that pain. Let me remind you again, God wants to use us in the areas of our greatest pain, because there is a passion that you have. So those that have experienced the pain of divorce, you have a passion to help others get through that pain. Those that have a pain of losing a loved one, you have a passion to help others recuperate and go through that grieving process. For those of you that have experienced the pain of infertility, you have a passion to help others work through that same pain. Those that have experienced the pain of drug addiction, you have a passion to help others work through that pain. The passion is not driven by money. It's not driven by fame. It's not driven by fortune. But it is a passion to help others people avoid the mess that you made. Satan is going to try to disqualify you based on the fact that you have messed up. Is there anybody in here that has not ever messed up? Okay, just making sure. Everybody has messed up. And Satan is going to try his best to try to disqualify you for that. We're not perfect, and we are all going to mess up, but God is going to turn your pain into a passion. God will not waste a hurt. He will not waste a wound. So he's not going to he's not going to let you walk through something. He's walking beside you, but he's not going to walk with you through something just to waste it and say, oh, okay, bye, let's go on to next. No, he's not going to do that. Because what he's going to do, he's going to turn that pain into a passion for you to walk with someone else. God did not cause your wound. He did not create your wound. He did not condone your wound. But God is going to turn your pain into a passion to help others. So we are called to the cause because we are connected to the crisis. Did you get that? That was good. I worked really hard on that. I'm gonna say that again so you get that. We are called to the cause because we are connected to the crisis. This isn't just about you overcoming an obstacle, this habit, this mess, this challenge, or this tragedy. There is going to be people during this next week, during this next month, during this next year that will come along, that will cross your path. And guess what that's called? That's called a divine appointment. And that's a God thing. God is going to have those people cross your path for a reason. Why is that? Because He knows that you have overcome, that you have been restored, and that you have a passion to help people walk through their problems. That's my God. Your destiny often incorporates the place of your agony. God wants to use your greatest mess in your life to be a message of hope, to be a message of vision, of faith, to help others. So something else that we should remember when facing one of life's messes. Number 3, the mess is part of the process that leads to our progress. What we view as a mess, God sees as progress. You know, there's a lot, I don't know how many of you ever been around artists or sculptors, but they don't typically ever want anyone to view their art until it's finished. Why is that? Because they know that it's a process. That they're taking that canvas, or they're taking whatever their media is that they're sculpting. They're taking that, and it is a process to where, you know, you can go in and one day it look like just a pile of mud on a potter's wheel, and then the next day there's a beautiful vessel, because it's a process. Your God-given identity and purpose may be found in the middle of your greatest mess and the greatest tragedy. So let's take a look at Luke chapter 22. And I know that we talked a little bit about Peter last week. Okay? So Luke chapter 22, we're going to read verses 31 through 34 in the Amplified Version. In verse 31, it says, Simon, Simon, Peter, listen, Satan has demanded permission to sift all of you like grain. Verse 32, but I have prayed especially for you, Peter, that your faith and your confidence in me may not fail. And you, once you've turned your back on me, once you have turned back again to me, strengthen and support your brothers in the faith. Okay? And Jesus tells Peter what the mess is going to be. So Jesus is like, okay, check this out. Peter, he said, Lord, I'm ready to go with you both to prison and to death. And Jesus says, hold on. I say to you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will utterly deny me 3 times that you even know me. So Jesus says, hey, you know what? Your life's about to be a mess. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. And you know what? It's going to come true. But when you sift the wheat, you separate the chaff from the wheat. It's a messy process. Why didn't Jesus just pray to stop the sifting? Why didn't Jesus just stop this mess? Jesus didn't pray in verse number 32. If you'll bring that back up, in verse 32, Jesus did not pray that Peter wouldn't hurt. Jesus didn't pray that he wouldn't be discouraged, that he wouldn't have a bad day, that he wouldn't cry, that he wouldn't cuss, that he wouldn't fail. In verse 34, he didn't pray that things wouldn't get messy, but he actually tells Peter, you're going to blow this 3 times. You're going to blow it. So what did Jesus pray for? He prayed for his faith. In verse 32, it says that your faith should not, what? That your faith should not fail. Again and again and again. Jesus did not want to just fix that one moment. God didn't just want to fix that one mess that he had. But God wanted to give him the faith and wanted to pray towards the faith that is going to help him get out of future messes as well. Jesus wanted him to learn to live by faith for a lifetime. You know, we've all heard that old saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for what? A day? Teach a man to fish and you feed him for what? A lifetime. That is what Jesus was doing. He's not just going to say, you know what, Peter, I pray that you make it through this one little mess of denying me. He said, I'm praying for your faith, that your faith will affect others and that you will support your brothers in your faith. In the middle of divorce, maybe an emotional breakdown, bankruptcy, job layoffs, kids running from God, a husband or wife being unfaithful, a migraine, a bad medical report, a flat tire on the way to work, or a crash on your hard drive with no backup. Will your faith stand? Will your faith stand? Whose report are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the report of the Lord? Or are you going to say, you know what, this is a mess, forget it. It's during times like this that we have, number 4, that we turn our focus from the mess to the Messiah. We turn our focus from the mess to the Messiah. You know, any of y'all NASCAR fans in here? Anybody? There's 4 or 5 of you. Okay. And I'm full of useless information, okay? And my wife can attest that I watch some of the dumbest discovery shows, and she's like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "Don't hate. I'm gathering information." She said, "For what?" Just like we're driving down College Avenue by the veterinary's office, and we see the sign, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's very interesting." The other day it said, "Did you know that shrimp can only swim backwards?" And I was like, "Wow, that is very interesting." She said, "Why is that interesting?" I'm like, "It just is." She said, "Why?" You'll never need to know that. I said, "You never know when we're playing Balderdash, which is a board game, and I need to come up with some information for trivia. You just never know." But sorry, let's get back to this. Back to NASCAR, okay? But did you know that in NASCAR driving school, you probably didn't, but they are told to always be looking through the top 1/3 of the windshield. Why is that? Because they want you to keep your eyes on where you want to go in a distance. Ooh, are you getting that? Keep your eyes where you want to go in a distance and not right at the end of your own hood. Look where you want to drive, and look where you want to drive, and you'll drive there. So where are you looking? Are you looking here at your feet, at your current circumstances? Are you looking at what is currently weighing you down? Or are you looking forward to where God is taking you and what God is calling you to do and what God is calling you to say, what God is calling you to be? Are you looking forward or are you looking down at your feet? Where is your future? I can promise you, your future is not here at your feet. Your forward is looking forward and looking up towards the heavens. Keep your eyes on the answer, not on your problem. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3, in the New Living Translation, it says, "You will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you." When facing one of life's messes, we should remember, number 5, start acting like the victor instead of the victim. Start acting like the victor instead of the victim. Everyone has a mess. No matter if you're rich, no matter if you're poor, no matter if you're black, no matter if you're white, no matter if you're young, no matter if you're old, if you're educated, if you're uneducated, if you're sick, if you're healthy, if you're unemployed, if you're employed, or even if you're self-employed, guess what? Everyone still has a mess. Nobody escapes it. It's going to happen. Stop feeling like a victim, that you're being picked on. But your promise is found right here in Scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13. It says, "The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. And God is" what? And God is only going to be there part the time. No. God is faithful. Why? Because He's going to be there all the time. He is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you can endure. God has faith in you. He has faith in your faith. You know why? Because He's praying for you. He prayed for Peter. He's praying for you. He's praying for you to have faith to deal with your mess. Here's something that's very ironic, and that when I thought about this, I'm like, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. Victims ask why. Victors ask, where's the answer? So where are you living at? Are you living as a victim? Why was I born in this family? Or looking for the answer of God is saying, I was born in this family for a reason. Why am I in this current situation? Why our circumstances are the way that they are. We don't know if you caused it, if it may have been your family member, it may have been the devil, or just an evil person. That doesn't mean that you have to stay there. Don't stop being the victim. And it's time to remember that we have the victory already, that Jesus Christ died on Mount Calvary for you and for me. And guess what? It took that mess and made it a masterpiece really quick. So it's time for us to realize that we've got a masterpiece in our hands. We've got a masterpiece in our heart. We've got a masterpiece right here. Now, when is it going to become your message? Stop trying to change the story of this current chapter that you're in. And this is where I really got bogged down for a very, very long time, is that I kept focusing on the pains from my past, my failures. I kept allowing that to define, because I was looking right here. But it wasn't until I realized that it's time for me to end this chapter. Okay, when you're reading a long book, it has chapters, right? And so you're not just starting the beginning of a story and working to the very end of a story with no chapters. Because what happens? There are chapters in a book. There are chapters in our life. And sometimes we just need to end a chapter and say, you know what? I'm done with this chapter of life. And it's time for me to start writing that new chapter in my life. We need to focus on writing the next chapter. What will be the chapter? What will be the title of your next chapter? Are you going to be the victor, or are you going to be the victim? Is the mess going to be an opportunity, or is that mess that you're facing going to be an obstacle? The enemy intends for you to go through life as a victim. He wants to bring you down. But God declares that you are the victor. This pain, you're not alone. You're facing that pain, and people have faced that same pain before. And you know what? Satan can only remind you of your past, because that's all he has. You know why? Satan doesn't have a future. So all he can do is try to pull you down. He does what he wants to. He has come to steal, to kill, and to destroy. That's all he knows. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So everything that he does is for that, to steal, kill, and destroy. So when he's reminding you of your past, he's trying to steal. He's trying to steal something from you. He's trying to take you out. He's trying to destroy you. But then you have to remind Satan, hey, Satan, you know what? Let me remind you, you're trying to remind me of my past. Let me remind you of your future. Because you know what? Satan is defeated. And he does not have a future. But you know what? You have a message. And that future, that message is a future with Jesus Christ Almighty. So I'm not going to take the time to read Genesis chapters 35 through chapter 50. Okay? I'm going to be conscious of your time. I understand that some of you want to get to Chicken Express and have some chicken, right? That's the godly chicken here in El Dorado. Okay, so I'm not going to read all that story, okay? But what it is, I'm going to circle back to it and kind of remind you and to pull out some highlights of this story. And it's the story of Joseph. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. He wasn't wanted by his own siblings. He was falsely accused of rape, and then he was imprisoned. He interprets the dream of Pharaoh, Pharaoh's butler and the baker, and because he said in 3 days you will be restored and you will die. Tells the butler, remember me when you go back to Pharaoh. He was forgotten about for 2 more years of prison. And every single time, Joseph stayed faithful. Pharaoh had a dream. Joseph interpreted it. 7 years of prosperity is coming, followed by severe famine for 7 years. It worked out. That was a mess, right? Each one of these, are you noticing that each one of these instances is a different mess? But you know what? God was faithful the entire time. Joseph was placed in second in command over all of Egypt. 22 years later. 22 years of mess after mess. And the answer is revealed. In God's hands, Mike Slacato said this, in God's hands, intended evil becomes eventual good. Your mess right now may be the keys of life for many people. Stop looking in the rearview mirror. Look through that 1/3 top portion of your windshield and look where you're going. Start looking through the upper 1/3 of the windshield on where you're going. Stop looking at the mess behind you and start looking at the Messiah. Joseph's brothers meant evil against him, but God turned that mess around. In Romans chapter 8, verse 28, it says, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. The mess that you're in right now may very well be the message of hope and faith God wants you to take to this world. Because sometimes, number 6, our misery will often become our ministry. The mess that you had last month, last year, 10 years ago, that you don't want to talk about, that mess may very well be the lifeline of hope to bring victory to other people. You have to make up your mind to decide for yourself that I'm going to make the devil pay for what he put me through. You want the ultimate justification? Go after Satan like he came after you. Take that message to the creator of that mess. Peter standing up for Christ in public. You know what? He denied him 3 times. We talked about that, right? And we remember what Jesus said. So when you have repented and turned to me again, he said, you know what? I know you're going to mess up. And you know what? That's okay. Because you can return to me. And then when you do that, you're going to turn to me again to strengthen your brothers. Peter had to make this conversion. He had to make that decision and say, you know what? I got 2 choices. I can look down at this mess that I'm in and stay there, or I can look to the Master, the creator of my masterpiece, and let him be the creator of my message. And maybe the simplicity of your message is, let me tell you how not to do it. That's okay. Simple. But you know what? It works. It's okay. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3 through 7, God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. verse 4, He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort others when they are troubled. We will be able to give them, catch this, we are going to be able to give those who are troubled the same comfort that God has given us. Verse 5, for the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will shower us with His comfort through Christ. Verse 6, even when we are weighed down with troubles, we're going to be weighed down with troubles. It is for your comfort and salvation. When we ourselves are comforted, we will certainly comfort you. Then you can patiently endure the same thing we suffer. We are confident that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in the comfort that God gives us. Do you remember the comfort that you received from God? You know, all you have to do is imitate that comfort to help others. Be God multiplied. We are, as a Christian, we are supposed to love others, right? It doesn't say we are supposed to judge others. We're supposed to love others. We're supposed to comfort others, just as God has comforted us. The same grace God has extended to you and to me is the same grace that we must extend to others. Why? Because of what God has done for you and for me. On the day of Pentecost, God chose Peter. 40 days before this, Peter could not even stand up to the pressure of a little girl saying, hey, haven't I seen you with him? He couldn't even stand up to that pressure. But today, 40 days later, he stands in front of thousands and he preaches his very first recorded sermon of the New Testament modern day church. You have something God can use to further your the kingdom's purpose. You have a message inside of you. Every single person in this building today has a message for someone. You have not experienced the same things and the same pains that I have experienced. I have not experienced the same things, the same hurts, and the same pain that you have faced. And that's a good thing, because with that, we can cover a lot more space. So what would happen? What would this church look like if everyone accepted that, you know what, I've got a message that I need to tell someone else? What would it look like if we were to say, you know what, I need to step up and I need to stand beside some people that have the same pain that I have a passion for. So it's time for me to step in and step into what God has for me and for Him to be able to use that message that He has given me. So and I'm closing, when facing one of life's messes, we should always remember number 7. Never be afraid to share your messy story to point others to the Messiah. Pride says, don't reveal your darkness or your mess. Pride tells us that. Saying, you know what? I don't want that to be out there. I don't want people, they don't need to know. But you guys, it's time for us to stop playing games. And as pastors of our church, for too long, leadership has been, you know what? I've got pains and I've got a past But I'm too pride to let anybody see that. You guys, I'm an open book. And I'm real. And I'm going to tell you, I've got pains. But through Christ, I have been able to conquer that pain. Because now I have a passion, I have a message that I'm willing to share with everyone. And God is wanting to do the same thing for you. He's wanting to kick that pride to the curb. And He's wanting to take that pain, instead of you covering up, He's wanting to set you free from that pain and for you to give you a passion for others that are dealing with that same pain. Tell the pain of your past. Tell your story. What is your story? Our test will become our testimony.